Hello, this is Edward Lambert with another video about the 6-element model for acupuncture. And this video is going to present the Shaoyang stage in a cold-induced disorder. I did another video on the Yangming stage in a cold-induced disorder, and this one's going to be the second part, really. And the purpose of this video is to show an application of the spherical meridian flow, to where you can actually see specific meridian dynamics down to specific meridians showing patterns in the spherical space. Okay, let's get started with the Shaoyang stage. Okay, let's look at the Shaoyang connection here. Okay, first of all, with the Yangming stage, you start with the heating cycle. And this flows off through the Yangming meridians. Okay, so when Yangming division closes off, qi accumulates in the heating cycle to produce heat. So that signifies the Yangming is closing off, and then the qi will concentrate inside that heating cycle of heart, liver, small intestine, and spleen. Now the Shaoyang channel feeds qi into the heating cycle, supporting yin substances of spleen and liver, producing more heat against cold pathogens. Let me show you. This is a Shaoyang, and it will feed into this heating cycle. So as Yangming closes off, the Shaoyang division of gallbladder and sanjiao are still feeding qi into the heating cycle. And this produces more heat against the cold pathogen. You'll see it produce heat there. And this will keep the liver and spleen from being consumed by the fire and the heat of the heart and the small intestine when you get the support from the Shaoyang division of gallbladder and sanjiao. Now, we'll just note that the gallbladder and the sanjiao are polar opposites in the sphere, just like the stomach and large intestine are polar opposites. So let's look at now at what it looks like on the spherical flow. Now, how Shaoyang connects to the heating cycle on spherical flow. Once again, here you'll see a picture of the red arrows and the red meridians of heart, liver, small intestine, and spleen. That forms the heating cycle. And you'll see that the Shaoyang meridians flow into the heating cycle. See those kind of magenta looking lines? Those arrows show how the meridians express around the sphere. So you have the gallbladder and the sanjiao expressing into the heating cycle. And then the heating cycle expresses outward along the orange arrows to the Yangming division. Now keep in mind that the Shaoyang meridians are polar opposites, just as the stomach and large intestine meridians are polar opposites on the sphere. So you have to kind of visualize this whole thing in a spherical space. This heating cycle is on the front side of the sphere. On the back side of the sphere, you still see lung, pericardium, and kidney. I'll be getting to that in a second. I'm going to be talking about the back side of the sphere here as we move on. Okay, let's go. The meridian dynamic against cold. So Yangming closes, and heat accumulates in the heating cycle. We see that happening. Those white dashed lines show that the Yangming is closing down, and the heat is accumulating in the heating cycle, and then the Shaoyang stays open and feeds the heating cycle. Yin substances are produced because the Shaoyang division is supporting the heating cycle. Now the meridian dynamic of Shaoyang stage. In the Shaoyang stage of a disease, a different meridian dynamic is produced. The meridians of bladder, pericardium, kidney, and lung form a cycle for cooling the body. This cycle is on the opposite side of the sphere from the heating cycle. It's on the back side. The heating cycle is on the front side. This is the cooling cycle. We're going to be looking at the cooling cycle primarily in this video. In the Yangming video, in the Yangming stage of a cold-induced order, we looked at the heating cycle. Now in this video for the Shaoyang stage, we're going to be looking at the cooling cycle primarily. So how 4 meridians of the cooling cycle are connected on the spherical meridian flow? They're on the back side. So when you see there in the blue meridians and the blue arrows form a circular pattern from the bladder to the pericardium to the kidney to the lung and back up to the bladder. When qi concentrates in that area on the back side of the sphere, you get coldness. Now all of these meridians are adjacent, and they form this circular relationship where the qi concentrates in that area to produce their meridian effects. So now let's look at the symptoms of the Shaoyang stage. In the Shaoyang stage of a cold-induced disorder, the meridians form a dynamic to produce the following symptoms: alternating fever and chills, bitter taste in mouth, poor appetite, irritability, irregular heartbeat, vomiting, bloating, nausea. So how are we going to see these symptoms in the meridian dynamics of the spherical meridian flow? Let's look. The cooling cycle. The cooling cycle functions to cool down the body by circulating qi through the water element and its meridians, bladder and kidney. So water absorbs heat and washes it away. The pericardium and lung regulate the cooling process through this water element, which is absorbing the heat and washing away the heat. Now the cooling cycle is focused on pericardium. The pericardium regulates the efficiency of water metabolism in the body. Pericardium cultivates kidney fluids. You can see in this diagram below that pericardium is supporting the kidney. And the pericardium monitors thirst level and blood volume through its action of monitoring homeostasis, balance in the body, to keep the body in balance while it's fighting off these pathogens. Now let's focus on what the lung does in the cooling cycle. The lung disperses kidney fluids in the body. You can see that the kidney flows into the lung. So as the kidney fluids are being produced, qi is concentrating in the kidney fluids, the lung is dispersing them in the body. And then the lung sends these fluids to the bladder. And the bladder, in the most mundane sense, will just urinate away the heat. That happens a lot in many fevers, is the urination will take away the heat. Lung aids cooling with evaporation of fluids through the skin too. Now, connection to Shaoyang division. According to the spherical model, the qi from the cooling cycle flows out through the Shaoyang channel to the heating cycle. So you can see that right there. This cooling cycle, qi concentrates in there, and then normally qi will flow out through gallbladder and sanjiao, which is the Shaoyang division, and then through there it will go to the other side of the sphere to reach the heating cycle. So gallbladder and sanjiao are polar opposites on the spherical model. Shaoyang channel is a gate between the cooling cycle and the heating cycle. So you can see that as qi is concentrated in the cooling cycle, it'll go out through the Shaoyang, and then the Shaoyang will feed that qi into the heating cycle, and you'll get this balance. Connection to the Yangming division. According to the spherical model, the heat from the heating cycle flows through the Yangming channel to the cooling cycle. So the Yangming channel, Yangming division, stomach and large intestine. And you'll have qi flowing from those into the cooling cycle. Here we have the stomach and large intestine are polar opposites on the spherical model. Yangming channel is a gate between the cooling cycle and heating cycle. Just like the Shaoyang is a gate, the Yangming channel, Yangming division, is also a gate. So you have two gates. We're going to be looking into this now and seeing how these develop a dynamic. So how the four meridians of cooling cycle are connected to Yangming and Shaoyang. Yangming flows into the cooling cycle. So you can see back there on the back side of the sphere, those blue arrows forming between bladder to pericardium to kidney to lung to bladder. That's the cooling cycle. And then from the stomach meridian and the large intestine meridian, they flow into that cycle. They feed qi into that cycle. And now the cooling cycle flows to the Shaoyang channel, to the gallbladder and sanjiao, through those magenta arrows, from the back side of the sphere. So you're looking at all of this happening in a spherical space. And the spherical space allows you to see how these divisions control gates to certain qi concentrations in certain parts of the spherical structure. This is the ultimate part of six-element theory, is getting down to this spherical pattern to where you can actually see specific dynamics for specific meridians and how they're interacting to create qi concentrations to fight off disease, to create health, to create personalities, to create all kinds of things in life. Now the cooling cycle dynamic. In the Yangming stage, the Yangming channel closes off. The cooling cycle receives less hot qi. So we're talking about the Yangming stage. Remember, the Yangming stage closes off. It normally concentrates qi in the heating cycle, but it also stops qi from being fed into the cooling cycle. Yet cool qi still flows through the Shaoyang channel to be heated, but heat does not return to be cooled. So the cooling cycle begins to feed through the Shaoyang, and then the Shaoyang will feed that qi into the heating cycle, and then the heating cycle will create heat, but the Yangming won't let that heat come back to the cooling cycle to keep it balanced. It'll block it off in the heating cycle. So you still have the cooling cycle feeding into the heating cycle, which will produce more and more heat. Ultimately, liver, spleen, and kidney will be consumed because kidney is still feeding into the liver, into the heating cycle. But it is somewhat protected because it is at a distance from the heating cycle. Shaoyang stage dynamic. The Shaoyang channel closes. This protects kidney fluids. Qi accumulates in the cooling cycle. And now the qi from the heating cycle is cooled because the Yangming stage is still open. You'll see that here. So heat and toxins are washed out of the body. So this is the Shaoyang stage where the Shaoyang is closing down. So the body cools down. So you see once again that the Yangming and Shaoyang channels are gates between cooling cycle and the heating cycle. Chills of Shaoyang stage. Chills are a sign that the Shaoyang channel is closing and that hot qi is moving to the cooling cycle. Qi is accumulating in the cooling cycle. So pressure builds for the Shaoyang channel to open up. Okay, so watch this animation here. You're going to see the Shaoyang closes, the Yangming opens up, so more qi from the heating cycle is flowing in, and you get all this cooling action, chilling, and then that puts pressure on the Shaoyang channel. And this is how the Shaoyang stage works. As qi concentrates and moves and builds up and wants to move around the sphere, but the Shaoyang channel stays firm and stays closed to create these chills. Now note, the chills are normally felt in the back, while heat is normally felt in the front of the body. This coincides with how the spherical meridian flow matches to the body. Cooling cycle in the back of the sphere, while heating cycle in the front. And so that's just a side note there. Shaoyang stage symptoms. If the Yangming and Shaoyin channels are both closed, qi accumulates in both the heating cycle and the cooling cycle. Heating and cooling are both being activated and separated. This produces alternating fever and chills. The person may already have a fever from the Yangming stage. Also, when Yangming and Shaoyang channels are both closed and separated, a condition of heat interior with cold exterior can develop. And this spherical model helps you understand that when these two polar opposites of the Yangming division and the Shaoyang division, when they both close, that separates the heating cycle from the cooling cycle. So you get these alternating fever and chills, and you also get heat interior and cold exterior. So you're able to pinpoint better the meridians that are involved here. Other symptoms. Irritability, nausea, poor appetite, irregular heartbeat, and vomiting come from the pericardium being stressed and consumed by the accumulation of water qi. Irritability also comes from an accumulation of qi in the bladder meridian. Bloating comes from the accumulation of kidney fluids as the lung qi is consumed by the accumulation of water qi. Bitter taste in mouth is related to gallbladder meridian closing. Now, symptoms of breaking a fever. Breaking a fever lowers body temperature and produces sweat. Yangming channel opens up, pouring heat and toxins into the water element of the cooling cycle. Lung flushes heat and toxins through the skin by sweating and sends fluids to the bladder. Pericardium regulates body fluids, thirst, and blood volume. Now, the Taiyin, Shaoyin, and Jueyin also have stages. If the meridian dynamics of the Yangming and Shaoyang stages are unable to fight off the disease before the yin substances of liver and spleen are depleted, and the yang activities of pericardium and lung get overwhelmed, then the cold pathogen can penetrate more deeply into the body, leading to the Taiyin, Shaoyin, and Jueyin stages. The polar connections of Taiyin, Shaoyin, and Jueyin are essential to maintaining the integrity of the spherical structure. This is kind of a complicated thing about the spherical meridian flows, to understand really how these three divisions sort of tie the knot that keeps the spherical structure together as when the yin and yang essences embrace. So if these divisions break down, the spherical structure comes apart, leading to the separation of yin and yang essences. Now, the separation of yin and yang essences is a more serious condition. You're starting to get towards a very, very serious condition where someone is on the verge of dying. So you don't really want to get to a point where you're stressing out these Taiyin, Shaoyin, and Jueyin divisions, because they're the ones that really are holding the spherical meridian together. It's like a zipper. Once that zipper locks in, you can hold it together. But if you start to unzip these specific divisions, the yin and yang embrace will come apart. So some closing thoughts. There's the beauty in the spherical meridian flow. And how did we get there? Because we identified a sixth element called seed. Once you understand the seed element, and when you understand its place in relation to the other five elements, and then you go deeper into its geometries, you develop a six element model, and you develop the spherical meridian flow. And this is the beauty of what is happening right now, is once you understand the sixth element, you come to understand the spherical meridian flow. An integration of all meridian theory happens in the spherical meridian flow. This is a beautiful thing. Yes, it incorporates all of five element theory and more. It incorporates the sixth element of seed and all these specific meridian dynamics, to the point where you can start understanding Yangming stage and personalities and Shaoyang stage and Jueyin stage, and on and on and on and on, because you can see how these specific meridian dynamics are happening. That's the key here. You see more detailed views of meridian dynamics. Okay. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.